Welcome back, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. Good afternoon to Board, who is already here. I love reading your username out loud, every time it sounds like a scathing indictment of the episodes themselves. But yes, we're here. We're doing it a little bit different today, mostly because for a good while now, I should point out as well, I'm still pretty ill, so you're going to have to put up with me coughing every now and again. For a good while now, we have focused primarily on method, on tactic, on skill set, on delivery, on these types of really intellectually driven practices. So I think it's a high time, nay, the most required time that we have a look at media. Now, I want to qualify by saying opinions are very much like arseholes, in that we all have them and we rarely want to hear from them. But this is just mine. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. This is just my opinion. That is all. Make of that what you will. Let's not enter into any kind of nasty fandom discussion around my way or the highway and all that bullshit. But essentially, what happens is every few years, someone tries to reinvent Sherlock Holmes. And if you're some of the television channels in America, it seems like it happens every couple of months. And every few years, there is normally another expensive misfire that reminds us that you can't out Sherlock, right? The Irregulars, Enola Holmes, Sherlock and Daughter, but less so. That was more of a compelling Holmes in that show, and with Watson as well, the TV show that's happening at the minute. Each one of them is built like a spin-off that forgot the one rule of gravity, in that you remove the center and everything falls apart. What made Sherlock Holmes timeless in the compelling nature of the stories that he's in. And again, only my opinion. Wasn't the hat, wasn't the pipe, wasn't the violin. It was the tension between brilliance and detachment. Wonderful virtue. The fascination of watching someone who sees the world too clearly, but really too clearly to ever properly live in it. Enola Holmes is so bad. Oh my god, don't get me started. And look, with Enola Holmes, I enjoyed the books. Right? Were they riveting Sherlock Holmes stories still? No, but I enjoyed them as mysteries more so than I did the films. But we'll get into it. We'll get into it. Once you take that kind of tension away, though, once you make him charming or balanced or God forbid emotionally well adjusted, you don't have Holmes anymore. You just have beige television with good lighting. You can think of it like an archetype problem. Yeah, the adventure of the missing archetype. That's a really bad Sherlockian title. Um, but Sherlock isn't really a character. He is an archetype. The mind unrestrained by emotion, the logic engine in a world that's powered by sentiment. He's not a man solving crimes. He's a mind that's colliding with meaning. The problem with modern adaptations is that they mistake the look for the logic. They build the silhouette, the coat, the attitude, the London mist, but a lot of the time they either forget or really can't do the psychological machinery that's beneath it. Pennyworth, the TV show, they did it with Batman's butler. Gotham did it with villains. Watson does it by making the detective disappear altogether. All of them treat mythology as marketable IP instead of as a narrative necessity. The Watson character was built on his relationship to Sherlock. Pennyworth the butler, the villains in Gotham, they were all very interesting by themselves, but you spend a lot of it thinking about their interactions with Batman or young Bruce Wayne, and then when you don't get that, there's no payoff, right? The place that these types of things flourish is in the comic book world. There's more of a chance to explore that kind of lore behind it, but that's a whole other thing. A whole other thing. Um, Ford says Hugh Laurie is a better Sherlock Holmes than Henry Cavill will ever be, and he was not even playing Holmes. I Cavill was wasted or is going to be wasted. I think they're making a third one. I don't know, but Hugh Laurie is fantastic. When the House MD had just ended, it was coming up to the change of one of the doctors in Doctor Who, and I was rooting for them to pick Hugh Laurie. I think he would have been a wonderful doctor. Um, but yes, back to the archetype discussion. The archetype's essence is contrast. Holmes only exists because the world around him doesn't think like him. Once you surround him with other geniuses, or you make him too self-aware, or apologize for his detachment, whatever it is, you flatten the paradox that really made him interesting. You can't reverse engineer gravity without mass. That's the mistake that the proverbial they keep trying to build Holmes without giving him something to orbit. I mean, we have to address that television has shifted, right? We're in a ensemble era. Team arcs, redemption stories, trauma bonding over coffee. The writers appear to be told to make your characters relatable. But Sherlock isn't relatable. He's aspirational and alien. He's he's the personification of the part of us that wants truth more than comfort. That really doesn't play well in a world that's built on emotional validation. Shows like the Irregulars, God, I hated the Irregulars, or Enola Holmes. They bend themselves around this morality, seeming to say, what if the young, emotional, inclusive team is the real genius? And the answer is you get competent TV, but you lose the the electricity of watching someone who sees the matrix code in human behavior. That's why I like House MD so much. He genuinely doesn't care, although they exaggerated a lot of the self-destruction. Agreed. House was an incredible show. Sherlock works when it's one person against the noise. When the camera isolates thought from chaos, when the audience can feel how lonely omniscience is. Right? On the flip side, that's why Psych and Monk, They succeed because they maintain their isolation through humour. Sean Spencer pretends to be a psychic because the world wouldn't accept, I just notice everything. Adrian Monk's brilliance is chained to obsessive suffering. They are palatable because they really cloak the archetype in charm, but mirrored with fragility. But the structure, it's the misfit genius whose brain won't shut up. That remains your Holmes. BBC Sherlock started out really as, what's the phrase? Um, Lightning in a bottle, right? I mean, it's the show that seemingly reignited an entire generation of those who were fascinated around thinking like Sherlock Holmes. It visualized deduction as a superpower, almost. You know, with the text on screen and the frenetic editing, intellect became this kind of uh, action sequence almost, with the mind palace being this ultimate weapon. And for two glorious seasons, it was fresh. But by season three, it started folding in on itself. The show stopped being about solving mysteries and became about being Sherlock Holmes. It started to um, explain his trauma, humanizing his aloofness, and and emotionalizing. I'm not even sure if that's a word. I might have just made that up, but emotionalizing his intellect. Right. The paradox of Holmes is that he can't change. The moment you give him an uh, emotional arc, you really remove the constraint that makes his mind so precise. Like, look at the episode from season two with Irene. You had this whole time thinking, "Oh my god, she's just completely annihilated the mind of Sherlock through emotion and her sexuality." And yet, at the end, the win goes to the intellect. The win goes to his mind. I mean, Sherlock eventually became fan service, right? Easter eggs, family backstories, villain monologues, and lost the simplicity of intellect confronting chaos. Go back and watch that episode, The Great Game, right? Towards the end of season one, where he's solving all of these mini cases, and John baffled at how he can be so calm when everything around him is going mental. That's Holmes. That's the aspirational quality we all wish we could have. This is a comment coming in. Humanizing Sherlock Holmes for me is the greatest mistake there are in any adaptations. He was not created to be humanized as a character. Fair point. And don't be wrong, I love what the BBC highlighted in the area of the way Holmes carries out what he does. It's the acknowledgement that his emotions are still there, but he has this greater sense of control that was lost as it went through the rest of the series, because that's what you'd have to do in reality. You can't turn your emotions off, but you can have a greater and greater intellectual control of shaping them in specific situations. Right? That's the aspirational quality that shifts it. What what really made, for me, Conan Doyle's stories, trying to think of the fanciest word I can. What made them immortal wasn't melodrama. It was pattern recognition. It was human error and the science of noticing. Right? Like, just look at that as an idea. This character, this archetype, made noticing feel like a superpower. That's it. But once that becomes secondary to spectacle, and again, for me, the Robert Downey Jr. film suffered from this as well. Once the spectacle takes over, the the deductionist dies on screen. Right? If you look at the end of the first Robert Downey Jr. film, you got the wrap up of the insight and the flashbacks in a couple of minutes towards the end. I shan't say what they are in case there are like a few people who still haven't seen the film, but there was a lot of focus on the spectacle of the boat crash and the fights and the mysticism and the anger and the diving out of the side of the Parliament. Spectacle is seen on a higher hierarchical level than the brain that he is. My mind is a racing engine tearing itself to pieces. Listen to that as an idea. It's phenomenal. We're getting we're getting pretty dorky right now, and I'm okay with it. But while official Holmes reboots stumbled, his spirit very much lives in other areas. House MD, a medical Holmes, addicted, antisocial, but a diagnostic genius. His cases aren't whodunits, but like a what done it. Every episode is a murder mystery of the body. Watson becomes Wilson. The violin becomes a guitar and the piano. About the mentalist, Patrick Jane replaces logic with illusion. He weaponizes human behavior not for science, but for showmanship. Still Holmes. I never could resist a touch of the dramatic, Holmes would say. He's detached, obsessive, mourning, MOUR, mourning, grieving, loss, but using pattern recognition to impose order from the chaos. Monk, compulsive genius, but as a tragedy. His observation is perfect, arguably. His life, chaos. Right? That's Holmesian duality distilled. Mastery in the mind, misery in life. My mind rebels at stagnation. Give me problems, give me work, give me the most abstruse cryptogram, the most intricate analysis, and I am in my proper atmosphere. Then I can dispense with artificial stimulants. That was a Holmes quote. Towards the end, I wasn't just waffling. I don't know Monk that well to be able to randomly quote the show like that. Psych. Again, the comedic echo, but this is Holmes through self-awareness, the deductive brilliance disguised as entertainment. You know, the genius pretending to be psychic is Doyle's consulting detective, but in pineapple covered shirts. These shows understood that the archetype is functional, it's not historical. They didn't need Baker Street, they didn't need the deerstalker, the pipes, and all of the pageantry. They needed visual cognitive dissonance. Each protagonist isolates themselves, battles perception, and survives by thinking differently. That's like a that's like a weird little triad of a Holmes formula. They are Sherlock through application, not replication. I need to be able to cut to my favourite Benedict Cumberbatch video, um, where he's not being Sherlock. I don't know where it's from. He's doing an American accent, and it's a big speech that he's reading. So grinding away at yourself. Stop it and just do. But here's my opinion on the corpses with Watson. It's a well-intentioned idea, a medical drama about grief, loss, purpose. But you remove Holmes and you remove the gravity. Watson without Sherlock is empathy without contrast. Watson was compelling because of who he stood beside. It's like watching a satellite mourn its planet. And in that vein, making Watson the central figure, everything else feels like it's cramming in the additional. Oh, did you get that reference? Oh, did you get that idea? Oh, do you know what that connects to? Just for the sake of it. Enola Holmes, entertaining, sure, if you like that kind of thing. Holmesian, not even kind of close. It replaces observation with empowerment. It replaces intellect with moral enthusiasm. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not Holmes, right? Enola is charming, but the films forget that deduction isn't about feelings; it's about structure. And then you use Sherlock as a cameo almost, and it just reduces him to IP decoration. Even more so when you have it in a massive star like Henry Cavill. We're so looking forward to seeing a Sherlock that lifts as well. The Irregulars. I if I'm going to paraphrase The Wizard of Oz, I think I hate it most of all. It was Netflix's attempt to be edgy and supernatural, but the magic ruins the method. You can't really merge deduction and destiny. One negates the other. There was a series of books that I read with Holmes written within Lovecraftian mysteries, and it was like they were aware of this concept, trying to put this intellect first within a mystical premise, and it didn't really pay off. But like with the Irregulars, it was Holmes without empiricism, and you can't do that and still call it Holmes. Again, only my opinion. But these series, they all share one flaw in that they treat intelligence as a costume rather than a conflict. The audience doesn't want a universe where Holmes exists. They want a universe that needs him. And it seems like modern networks are terrified of unlikable leads. And I get it. You're a business. Fine. They A/B test empathy. They algorithm emotion. They mistake complexity for relatability. But Sherlock isn't. He's not built to be liked. He's built to be questioned, respected, even feared. Right? He's the narrative equivalent of a controlled substance, thrilling in small doses, but dangerous in excess. These executives, whomever they are, they sand off his edges. They turn him into a misunderstood genius with a heart of gold, or a mentor figure, just trying to make Holmes safe. But safety kills curiosity. This archetype thrives on discomfort. That moment when intellect violates the social norm. That's why Luther worked. It was chaos versus control. Um, True Detective is another one. It worked because it was philosophy versus entropy. Modern Sherlocks don't fail because people are tired of the lone genius. They fail because people are tired of watching genius made ordinary. Every generation projects itself onto Holmes. Victorian England saw rationalism as salvation. The 2010s saw intellect as identity. Now we see empathy as some kind of morality, and intellect suspiciously as arrogance. So we keep rewriting Holmes to fit our ethics, kinder, warmer, more vulnerable, whatever it is. And in doing so, we really erase what made him revolutionary. The archetype survives not because he changes, but because he resists the change that is thrust upon him. He holds the mirror as steady as he can, while the culture writhes and changes in front of it. The detective is only as good as the world that needs detecting. When culture stops valuing reason, Holmes becomes a relic, or even worse, a cameo. I, I think it's fair to say that as a culture, we've stopped valuing our ability to think. Sherlock's not a detective, he's an idea. What happens when your intellect, your brain, your thoughts, your ideas, your insights, the things that you notice, what happens when all of that refuses to surrender to noise? His is the mind that still believes observation can reveal truth, even in a world that runs on opinion. So when I'm saying that the modern Sherlocks don't work, I'm really more saying that the modern world doesn't know what to do with him. So until that time, either stop using him, or he'll keep being rebooted, repackaged, and misunderstood. There was a tagline to a museum exhibit I saw years ago. It was Sherlock Holmes, the man who never dies. This makes me wonder if, because Sherlock Holmes never dies, is that because we just keep misreading him? But yeah, there we go. and this is only in light of Watson bringing Sherlock Holmes as a character back in, using Robert Carlyle, an actor who I love Robert Carlyle. I think he's fantastic, and I kind of see parts of why he was chosen in the nose and the profile. I just I don't know. I fear the overuse of a character that I cherish so much by people that don't really seem to understand him. Yeah. And with that in mind, folks, I'm going to love you and leave you. Let me know your opinions down below in terms of who your favourite geniuses are. And if they're stable, I question if they are geniuses at all. I'm not going to go into Nietzsche or anything like that, but I would question that observation. But I am curious, and as I say, these are just opinions, That's all. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're right. Whoever, these are just opinions. So I'm going to leave you. I'll see you next week.